Bethesda released a new update to the Creation Club yesterday. It's been quite a while. I, for one, have been looking forward to this update, so let's dig on in and see what we've got today. Now, yes, I know I'm supposed to release episode 3 of my series on the Bright Brotherhood. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm publishing that video tomorrow. But I can't predict when Bethesda's gonna release Creation Club content. This caught me by surprise and I have to cover it. So please be understanding. I'll get back to the lore tomorrow. But for today, this is Oxhorn's Mod Muster. We don't get any new quests, no new armor, weapons, or experiences, but we still get a lot of pretty cool stuff, so let's go through it. First up, they grouped the Doom Marine Armor and the BFG into a Doom bundle, which is 50% off. I covered this in my last video on the Creation Club. I wasn't terribly interested in the Doom stuff, but for those of you who are, now's a great time if you want a discount. As for the new stuff, we get a new Pip-Boy skin, this time Desert Camo. And at the moment, it's free, normally 50 credits, so if you want some Desert Camo for your Pip-Boy, now's the time to snag it. A great complement to this is a brand new paint scheme for Power Armor. Another camo, this time Desert Camo, also free, for a limited time I'm presuming, normally 100 credits. But I think most people are going to be excited about the brand new weapon skins, or weapon paint jobs as they're described here. These new weapon paint jobs are by Creation Club author Skibada, and they should be familiar. They're the same paint jobs that we can get for our Power Armor, the Hot Rod Pink, the Hot Rod Flames, and the Hot Rod Shark. Each of these go for 100 credits, or we can get a weapon paint job bundle for 225 credits. This includes all three. Also, one thing to note, after I purchased this, I had to download it. One of the biggest criticisms of the Creation Club when it first released is that Bethesda forced us all to download the assets to all of these Creation Club creations, even if we didn't choose to buy them. That frustrated a lot of people, and for good reason. We only have so much hard drive space, especially those playing on consoles. From all appearances, it looks like Bethesda heard our cries of pain, and now we only download them when we purchase them. At least that's what I see here. Now, the final new offering, the one I'm most excited about, is a new issue of Picket Fences, this time Home Decor Workshop. This workshop pack is by Eleonora. She's released a lot of wonderful mods for Fallout 4. I've reviewed many of them in my previous mod musters, and today she's releasing a creation that adds a lot of new stuff to our settlement build menu. And in typical Eleonora fashion, she has put a lot of attention to detail in these, so I'm excited to go through each and every one of them. We can get the entire pack for 200 credits. And that's it for this update, so let's check them out. Now, the new weapon skins don't work on every weapon. They only work for a small handful. The laser rifle, the Institute rifle, the combat shotgun, the assault rifle, the combat rifle, the 10mm pistol, the 44 pistol, the minigun, the Gatling laser, and the missile launcher. Thankfully, these weapons are pretty commonly used. I use them on all of my characters except for my Minuteman sniper. But there is a downside to this. I had a lot of trouble getting these weapon skins to work, and the reason is because I use mods. These new weapon skins are not very compatible with third-party mods. Here I am in the weapon workbench, and I should be able to apply the new paint jobs from the workbench, but the option does not appear. I tried a number of things to try and get these to show up. I removed all weapon textures and meshes I had installed. I renamed the interface folder in my Fallout 4 installation directory, and nothing seemed to work. I then went through and uninstalled mods that I thought might be conflicting with this new creation, one by one. But no matter which mod I uninstalled, it never seemed to be the cause. I just couldn't get these paint schemes to show up in my workbench. I was finally successful only by uninstalling all of my mods. More specifically, I had to disable every single plugin, every single ESP that I had installed. Now, this is not going to be an issue for those of us who play without mods, which is going to be most of us. But there are still hundreds of thousands of players across all platforms who play Fallout 4 with mods mods installed. And if I'm being perfectly honest, if it weren't for the fact that I was making this video, I simply wouldn't go through my Fallout 4 installation and disable my mods just to get these weapon skins. I can see this being a very frustrating experience for players who don't know that the weapon skins conflict with mods and only realize it after purchasing the weapon skins. I imagine that being quite disappointing. Now, this really is an impossible situation for Bethesda to solve. They can't make their creations compatible with every single mod out there. They can't predict the mods that are out there. These mods are user-generated. Every single modded installation of Fallout 4 is like a thumbprint. It's going to be completely unique, and we really can't expect Bethesda to make these skins compatible with all possible modded game installs. And yet at the same time, we have to consider the reality. The reality is that there are many people who are playing modded games, which means many people are not going to be able to use these weapon skins with their mods installed, which leads to disappointment. The only solution to this that I can think of is for Bethesda to create a warning before downloading creations like this that might conflict with mods, saying that these creations might not work if we have mods installed. That way, at least players are warned ahead of time before purchasing that the product they're about to buy with real money might not work on their modded game install. Anyway, after I disabled all of my mods, I was finally able to get the paint menu to appear in my weapon workbench. To modify a weapon, access the weapons workbench, and then choose the weapon you want to modify. At the very bottom, we're going to find a new option to apply the paint. In this example, it says lookup failed simply because I have a modded interface conflict. This won't appear in unmodded games. We can then go through and choose which of the 3 paint schemes we want: the Hot Rod Flames paint, the Hot Rod Pink paint, or the Hot Rod Shark paint. The good news is that the quality for each of these paint schemes is pretty high. I examined each of these on all of the weapons that I painted extremely closely, and I didn't find any errors, no glitches, nothing like the protruding frame that we saw on the Hellfire Power Armor creation. Thankfully, the quality control on this seems pretty great. I love all of the scratches and dirt and grime that we still get to see on each of these paint schemes. It makes the weapons look like they're used in everyday combat. Now, the Hot Rod paint scheme is probably my least favorite. It's just too dark. It doesn't show up very well. But the pink Hot Rod paint job is pretty great. It really highlights all of the scratches and dirt and makes each of these weapons look unique. I'm also pretty pleased with the shark paint job, especially on the minigun. On the minigun, we see this big shark on the ammunition canister. And on most of these guns, we're gonna find a big smiling shark face on the barrel or grip. Now, I think this is gonna please a lot of players. But for me, personally, this isn't something I'm terribly interested in. The idea behind the Hot Rod paint job is that a wastelander is examining a magazine of paint schemes that were originally designed for race cars. He then takes those paint schemes and outfits them for power armor. That makes a lot of sense to me. But Hot Rod paint jobs on guns doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Instead, what I would love to see is maybe a modular way to make each of my guns unique. I really love the way unique guns are dealt with in Fallout New Vegas. There are a couple of wonderful guns that are full of character. For example, the Survivalist's rifle from Honest Hearts. The sight is bent. There's a story behind that. The Survivalist may have been trying to affix a scope and accidentally bent it. There are carvings in the stock related to the Survivalist's past history as a U.S. serviceman while he was annexing Canada. Another good example is the laser weapon we get in the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters. This was owned by the guy who was hunting down people who had Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle caps, and he had a unique weapon that had bottle caps all over it. He also had notch marks for all of the people he killed to take those bottle caps. Now, I realize that what I'm describing is technically extremely complicated to do. We would have to have modular mesh pieces that you could swap in and out, and textures for different pieces of the weapon, some that had notch marks, some that had decals. I realize that that's pretty unrealistic. But if I was going to modify my weapon aesthetically to give it its own unique story, to match the unique name that I gave it, that's the kind of system that I personally would be looking for. That's outside the scope of what we find with this creation, and that's okay. For what it is, it's really high quality, and I'm sure it's going to please quite a few people. Next up is the Desert Camo paint job for power armor, and it does indeed work with every suit of vanilla power armor: the T-45, the T-51, the T-60, and the X-01. Like the weapon skins, this power armor paint job is pretty high quality. It looks worn and scratched just as I would expect it to be. Some of the ridges of the power armor have the paint worn away, where those ridges have been scratched by weapons or loot that we've been holding. There's dirt and grime all over them. The quality is great. Now, you've heard me complain about camouflage in my previous videos. I realize that this is not a big deal for most people. Desert Camo, though, I believe was created specifically for the Gulf War. It was developed in the 1980s and used throughout the 1990s during the Persian Gulf War. Now, as far as I know, the Persian Gulf War didn't happen in the Fallout universe. And yet, if this camouflage is lore-friendly, then we have to explain where it came from. Now, it's totally possible that this type of camouflage was developed for a completely different reason. Maybe it was developed by Europe during the European resource wars, which are part of Fallout lore. That's totally possible. Or it could have been developed by the United States while they were trying to secure fossil fuels during the resource wars. Admittedly, I'm being persnickety about this. Most won't care, so just ignore old Oxhorn. He's just being a grump. But in my game, I probably wouldn't use this kind of camo just because it sort of irks me from a lore perspective. Now, like the Onyx, Chrome, and Swamp Camo paint schemes from the Creation Club, this Desert Camo does not work on the Hellfire Power Armor from the Creation Club. I complained about this in my last video, but there's a good reason why it doesn't work with the Hellfire, and it was explained to me. Bethesda didn't want any of these Creation Club creations to be dependent upon each other. If, for example, they created a Hellfire version of the Desert Camo paint scheme, then even if you didn't buy the Hellfire Power Armor, but you bought the Desert Camo paint job, you'd have to download a Hellfire version of the paint scheme, even if you weren't going to use it. Similarly, if you downloaded the Hellfire Power Armor, but you didn't have the Desert Camo paint scheme, they'd have to create architecture in the workshop that accommodates the paint scheme for the Hellfire Power Armor, which is again more for the user to download, even if he's not going to use it. Also, if they came out with more paint schemes, which they likely will, we'd probably have to download an update for the Hellfire Power Armor each time, which is a lot for them to maintain. So that's why none of these Creation Club paint schemes work with the Hellfire version of the Power Armor. Next up is the Desert Camo paint job for the Pip-Boy. We apply this to our Pip-Boy the same way we do all of the others using the armor workbench, and it looks great. The thing I like best about it is how this tan desert camo is lighter than many of the other camo skins, which really brings out the dirt, dust, and grime on the Pip-Boy itself, making it look used and worn. The quality control on this is great. It's an attractive paint scheme. Again, not something I would use in my gameplay, but I think that players are really going to like it. And finally, the thing that I'm most excited about is Eleonora's home decor workshop. Here we are in Somerville Place. I'm redoing this settlement at the moment. I haven't announced it yet or anything, but I'm trying to go through all of my old settlements and completely redo them to make them better compatible with C. Dante's transfer settlement mod. But that's a topic for a video another day. Cracking open our workshop, we can take a look at some of the new items. Heading on over to the furniture menu, we see that Eleonora has included a bunch of new beds. These beds have sheets and pillows, which is great, making them much more comfortable for our settlers. We've got beds with black sheets, blue sheets, gray, green, and red. But best of all, we now have some bunk beds. And take a look at the number of beds. I have 24 in this settlement now, and after creating a bunk bed, that number pops up to 26. So a bunk bed does indeed count as 2 beds. These bunk beds come in gray, red, black, green, and blue. Moving on over to the containers section of our workshop, we've got some new lockers. These are functional containers that we can use to store our goods in. We've got this tan-looking locker with some cubby holes to the left, and she's got a version with a locker in the middle and 2 shelving units on either side. And look at this. Filled refrigerators. Take a look at that. We've got all sorts of stuff in there. Let's see, what have we got? Fancy Lad snack cakes, Instamash, Salisbury steak, Blamco mac and cheese. We've got some Mirelurk egg omelets in there, Tato's, bowls of food, fruit, and on the bottom there we've even got some Buzz Bites with some Nuka-Cola and ice cold milk. The refrigerators come in distressed gray, distressed blue, a bright clean white, here's a distressed dirty white, a dirty yellow, and look at this clean red. Oh, that's going to be great at my Nuka World truck stop settlement. In the miscellaneous section, we find 2 new display stands. These are new bobblehead display racks. I enjoyed the look and feel of the big, bulky bobblehead display stand that came with the vanilla game, but it takes up a lot of space, which is frustrating if you're trying to make a settlement in confined space like at Hangman's Alley. These are great because you can snap it right to the wall of your house and then place all of your bobbleheads on the shelf. These aren't entirely new. We've seen lots of mods with these bobblehead racks before, but for those who don't use mods, this is a great new addition for your settlements. Heading on over to floor coverings, we find a selection of brand new rugs. But look at this. These rugs produce happiness. Oh no, this is going to be putting my settlement happiness calculator all out of skew. Each of these rugs adds +1 happiness, which is great because this means I don't have to put 20 bars in my settlements to reach 100 happiness. We've got this nice circular design. Here's a retro-looking lozenge design. Oh, and this is great. We've got a hallway-shaped throw rug for confined spaces. I'm excited to put that to good use. This looks like a Western design, something that might look good in the Mojave wasteland. Here's a nice solid black, a colorful vegetative floral, a striped green, a solid red, a more muted gray floral, and then here's a Vault-Tec one. Great for decorating Vault 88. Next, we'll go to wall decorations, and in the painting section, check this out. The Freedom Trail Boston. This is the Freedom Trail seal that we find on the ground in downtown Boston, and it comes in 2 versions, this larger square and a smaller square. Here's an old photograph. What is this? Is that the Boston Library? It almost looks like a church. Maybe it's Trinity Church in downtown. Oh, and look at this. A photograph of downtown Boston. But I wonder from what time period this is. It's clearly after World War II. There are a lot of tall skyscrapers that look like they were built in the 80s or 70s. Yet we don't find any of the high-tech buildings that we see in the ruins of Boston in the game. So this must be a photograph of Boston taken someplace after the divergence before many of the unique buildings were built. Here's a nice photograph of a pond and a tree. Is this the Boston Common? Looks too big to be the Boston Common, but I think I see buildings in the background from downtown Boston. And here we go. I like this. A photograph of the USS Constitution in all of her beautiful glory. And this, I think, is my favorite. This is a map of Boston as it was in the 1880s. This, of course, would be completely lore-friendly because the divergence didn't happen until the 1950s or so. Here we see many of the districts mapped out that we can explore in the game. Quincy, Roxbury. What a great little touch. Moving on to the posters category, we find a new slew of posters, and these are the magazine covers for many of our favorite perk magazines in the game. Here we get the beautiful covers for all of the astoundingly awesome tales, the Grognak comics, the Robco Fun magazines, and the Unstoppables. I've been wanting to adorn my settlement walls with these for ages. A great addition. She rounds everything off when we go to the decorations miscellaneous category with a bunch of new potted plants. We had potted plants in the game before, but these are different because they come in a variety of different pots and they produce happiness. Each of the plants produces +2 happiness. Some of them come in these nice terracotta planters. Here are some plants in buckets for a more rustic feel. And then she's got some in beautiful ceramic vases for those wanting a more high-end look. Here's another rustic touch, trees in boxes. These look like old milk boxes. We can get them in square boxes or these nice big round wooden tubs. If you don't want to have to sift through your entire workshop menu to find the stuff from Ellie's home decor package, she released an update that you can download that organizes everything into a Creation Club submenu of your settlement build menu. This puts everything from the Creation Club home decor section all in one place. You can find a link to her update in the description below. And that's everything with this latest Creation Club update. We've got some good stuff that's going to make people excited, but you know, I still find myself with a criticism that I've explained in past episodes. When the Creation Club was first coming out, Pete Hines, the VP of PR and Marketing at Bethesda, described these creations as being mini DLCs. Now, technically, this is an appropriate description because these are mini, and you do download them. So they are technically many pieces of downloadable content. That is accurate. But the way players perceive DLC is something that's much more in-depth. When I think of a mini DLC, I think of a new experience, a new place to explore, a new quest to complete, a new character to meet. These weapon skins, Pip-Boy skins, and Power Armor skins are great, but I don't think of them as mini DLCs. I realize that they are different from mods because they supposedly have better quality control, and Bethesda shares revenue with the Creation Club creators, but these items all feel like mods. I think Bethesda could earn a lot of goodwill from their community if, in some of the future Creation Club releases, we not only see some of this cool stuff like skins and new settlement build items, but also some more beefy content, something that we can't already get from the mod marketplace. Maybe a new settlement feature where the Minutemen restore a Commonwealth mail system, with drop boxes at each of our settlements where we can transfer goods from settlement to settlement, or maybe some updated uniforms for the Minutemen, which would be useful for those of us role-playing characters who have restored the Minutemen to their former glory. Or what about some of the stuff that Bethesda originally intended to do but had to scrap before they released the game, like the Institute biological weapons we saw in the Art of Fallout 4, or a quest to uncover an abandoned Institute lab where we find some Institute power armor, or some of the other enemies that they conceptualized, like the Para-Hunter, who wore a jetpack outside of power armor. That would be a fun new game mechanic. We don't know exactly what Bethesda has in store for the Creation Club, but we get a few hints. I was talking with C. Dante, the author of Transfer Settlements, and in the game files he discovered that Bethesda has plans to add new arcade cabinets and Slocum's Joe-themed decorations to the settlement build menu. Perhaps we will see that in future releases, and I think that sounds great, but ultimately I'm hoping for a little bit more from the Creation Club. At any rate, this was the latest release, and I hope that you saw something that you're eager to go home and explore. I'll be sure to keep my viewers up to date on the latest Creation Club offerings as they're released. And never fret, tomorrow morning we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming and complete the series on the Bright Brotherhood from Fallout New Vegas. Thanks for watching, everybody. I publish a new Fallout video 6 days a week on a wide range of topics spanning all of the games. If you want to make sure that you don't miss my next episode, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. And if you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with all sorts of Oxhorn news, including when I need to delay a video or skip a day. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.